Welcome everybody to this Evolve Live webinar. This is a slightly different take on our normal Evolve Live content because today we're doing a deep dive showcase into one of our provider members. And I'm really excited because today's provider member, Raw Software, is actually probably quite familiar to a lot of you who might have used the business success wheel for Elixir, which is actually built and powered by Raw, and it's a piece of technology that in fact we'll chat a little bit in passing today. But the reason I think we're so excited to have Raw along is there's a couple of really important issues that crop up a lot when we talk about technology with our clients and with advisors around the marketplace. The first is that there's such a plethora of options out there, and for those of you that might have seen this graphic put together by Net Wealth that shows just the breadth of technology providers in the marketplace. First of all, each of these sections of the pie chart show kind of different elements of a financial advice practice that can be supported by technology, and then all of the different packages that are available in each of those areas. And the thing is, it was probably out of date the day after it was written because it's such a fast moving area. So we get a lot of people asking about, how do we start to build a best of breed tech stack that's right for our business rather than relying on the traditional end-to-end solution of one technology provider? And that does create terrific opportunities for picking those best of breed solutions. But the challenge can be then the integration of those and the data connectivity and making sure you don't lose information or it becomes more cumbersome to use and there's no efficiency gain. And that's one of the core capabilities of Raw that we're going to touch on today, is this ability to be a hub and a connector between some of these best of breed tools. And the second thing we talk a lot about is how, again, technology is moving as the industry is moving away from just how do I complete my compliance obligations more efficiently? How do I do that basic stuff of producing SOA really efficiently? To how do I actually provide a really engaging client experience, and what tools are out there that can help me tailor my client experience to be far better and more engaging with clients. And again, there's some capability that Raw has developed that I think is a real game changer in how you present advice to clients. And so we'll dive into that a bit today. So I'm joined today by Simon Bishop from Raw Software, who's going to take us through a bit of background about Raw and importantly, what some of these capabilities bring to the table and explain the pricing models that they've got that make it a really cost-effective solution for addressing some of those challenges. So Simon, welcome to our Evolve Spotlight on Raw Software.
Thank you, Graham. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite. And, you know, I think today is a great opportunity not only to showcase what Raw can do, but also take a step back and really understand what is the choice that advisors have when it comes to selecting their productivity applications. And I think by doing that, the first thing is let's sort of try and solve or form an opinion on that age-old debate of whether we go for a best of breed or an end-to-end solution. I've been fortunate. I've been in the industry for over 20 odd years now, and being one of the co-founders of Coin Software back in the day, I was initially exposed to the end-to-end solution, and a lot of advisors out there would know of Xplan and Midwinter, Advisor Logic. They all fit into that category. And I think while it can sometimes be an easier choice, given you're only having to assess one system, it does come with its sort of cons or disadvantages, I think. And really the main one is that what tends to happen in this sort of end-to-end world is that as these providers tack on functionality, it's essentially, or a lot of the time, just fragmented solutions thrown together where integration is an afterthought. So at Raw Software, our real philosophy is down this sort of best of breed approach. And I'll talk more about our capabilities later, but essentially what that means is that we ourselves, like others in this space, provide or have this sort of advisor marketplace, which is what we call it, where not only you can access the tech provider like Raw's own productivity applications, but also get access to some leading edge technology via integrated third parties. And as we move through the presentation, we'll touch on how that can fit in with someone's tech stack. So how do we break that down a little further? Well, for those that are listening to the webinar rather than seeing it, we've just got at the moment a slide that really highlights the difference between the traditional sort of end-to-end world versus what we believe at Raw to be the future, which gives advisors choice when selecting the applications that best suit their practice. So if we think of sort of these more traditional planning applications, We understand that, there could potentially be this sort of lack of deep connectivity with other technologies. And then also, it's a little bit more difficult to innovate as, greater functionality hits the market, but these guys are sort of more bogged down into their existing infrastructure. So to be able to sort of, I suppose, access new technologies as they hit the market, we think our model fits this really well. And the ability, I suppose, not only for us to provide our own applications, but as I mentioned earlier, to be able to access other providers in this space. And you can see, or hopefully you can see on the screen there, some of the providers that we either integrate to currently or are looking to do so in the near future. As time goes on, we're seeing more and more of these third parties hit our marketplace, which again gives advisors greater choice.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic sort of area, isn't it? And it seems that, there's both here and because we're tapping into offshore providers too with things like workflow management. So yeah, it's a huge and ever growing area. So what's the background of Raw, Simon? Do you want to give us a little bit of the history?
Absolutely. So look, Raw's been around for over 10 years. We were formerly known as YTML, but went through a rebrand in the middle of last year. And the reason for that, I suppose, is that we, like the market, have evolved over the last decade. While our team really cut their teeth on, I suppose, things like data migrations and template building for some of the biggest institutions in Australia, the vision really was just to try and sort of overcome a lot of the inefficiencies and frustrations that financial planners face or experience when dealing with or having multiple productivity applications as part of their suite. So in 2018, we formed or released what is now known as the Raw Marketplace. And this is where advisors can access, as I mentioned, not only our own productivity applications, and we'll cover off our functionality a bit later, but also, again, other third parties that might fit a specific need. So why Raw? Well, you can see there over the years we have and still retain a lot of these big clients, whether they be, I suppose, the bigger institutional end, the mid-sized licensees, and even the boutique advisors. So we believe that we've got a marketplace or a solution that fits all types of advisors and the advice that they need to produce. So in terms of our capabilities, we'll just have a look now as to what really Raw's all about. And look, I've spoken about our development journey, I suppose. There's another slide that just highlights some of the different clients that we have on the marketplace. We'll just move through that one though. And then, okay, so what is Raw? So Raw, we are underpinned by, I suppose, with our own CRM. So we have a contact management system. Really, we believe it does what 80% of boutique advisors require from a CRM perspective, but we do have the ability to integrate to some of these more comprehensive CRMs, which I'll touch on as well. Our real specialty, I suppose, at Raw centers around two key things. One being integration and connectivity that we've spoken about, but also advice document generation. And I think, if I was to argue what is our real point of difference, it's the ability to produce a statement of advice or any type of advice document for that matter in a quick, efficient manner without that need to spend so much time in post-editing these documents. The other way that we can improve efficiencies when it comes to advice document generation is through that integration. So the ability to suck all the data from whatever application you're using to produce advice via what we call our strategy wizard into our templates, and then subsequently that final advice document. On the screen now, we've got some of the other capabilities we have. Raw does a wide range of services and applications. You can see their document change management. We've got websites. We're actually, Raw is probably responsible for, most websites for that sort of boutique advisor space in Australia. So not many people know that. And then obviously the ability to capture client data and then produce advice.
But you sort of end up becoming a bit of the hub then, do you, for the practice where they can then use that as the way to connect together all these different tools?
Absolutely. We want to try and provide an environment or a marketplace where even if the advisor is using multiple applications, to the end user, it essentially feels like they're just using one. So through that connectivity and integration and that sort of link to our advice document generation capabilities, it's a way for an advisor to feel like they're in an end-to-end world, but get the benefits of the best of breed approach.
Right.
In terms of what we do, we like to break out the different parts of the advice process. So we've just got a slide here that illustrates where not only our applications, but also our third parties fit into that puzzle, whether that be from the initial prospecting, capturing client data through to your cash flow modeling and reviews. We have that capability either through Raw or our associated and integrated third parties. And the next slide is just an extension of that. And you can see some of the different providers that we either integrate to now or have in our development pipeline. Okay, in terms of bundles and pricing, we have 3 different license types and bundles. So whether that be basic, which is essentially more for the admin person, gives them access to the CRM, the ability to create file notes and workflows and participate in that advice process. The second license, which is, we call that the standard license, that's at $75 plus GST per user per month. This is really that license that's perhaps designed for the advisor who needs to access the integration piece between different third parties overall. And one such example might be the link between Astute Wheel and Xplan. So it's very popular at the moment. Even if those advisors out there are happy to keep using Xplan for their advice, Raw still has that license available that allows them to capture their client data in Astute Wheel, send it to Raw, which we then pass on to Xplan. And the principle's the same for any of these different third parties. And then finally, the premium license. This essentially is everything that Raw does. So everything from being able to capture the client data through our online fact find or reverse fact find, the ability to produce advice documents, which now even extends to digital advice, which is pretty exciting and something that we'll talk about.
So just so I've got right, Simon. So if, just say I was a 2-advisor practice with 2 support staff, but I was still using, say, Xplan because I wanted to use X tools and the SOA generation.
Yep.
What do you think we would need, and what would be the pricing for?
Sure. Look, it depends on the different roles of those people within the business, because it can vary from practice to practice. But typically, think of it this way: if you're looking to produce advice now, in a practice like you suggested, it might be a paraplanner that does the actual plan. So in that case, they could get away with just 1 premium license, and the advisors or support staff might be able to get away with a standard. However, if an advisor needs to produce an advice document themselves, then they would need access to a premium license. Now, saying that, at Raw, we are conscious of that total cost of wallet to the advisor. So we've been really aggressive, we believe, in our pricing structure, because we do appreciate that while Raw provides a lot of things for advisors and their clients, there may be a need to add different third parties. So we've gone to market with what we believe a really compelling price point. And for $150 per user per month, you can see the access that they get to the entire Raw suite.
Right, but it could be that if you've got admin staff, for example, that don't need everything, you might need a mixture of standard and premium licenses, so it can be more cost effective.
Absolutely, and look, that's part of that sort of qualifying discussion I have with advisors. Typically, we understand what their practice looks like, who performs what roles, and then I come back to them with essentially a recommendation on the different license types that fit their requirements.
So you're saying that there's a range of different applications that you can access through the suite. Do you want to explain sort of what some of these are?
Yeah, for sure. So look, we've got a couple of, on that slide there, you can see the Raw references there in terms of the fact find, the wizard, the dynamic SOA. They're all included as part of that premium license. But in terms of some of the integrated third parties we have on the platform, you'll notice there we have a range of different external third parties, and whether that be fitting into sort of goal-based advice, we've got like a compliance check through Chantwest for the super pension investment product comparisons, OmniLife, which is popular with a lot of advisors as well. But saying that, that's what our environment or marketplace looks like today. Just understanding what we've got in the development pipeline, we'll continually add a number of third parties over time. And one of the biggest integrations we've been working on over the last 24 months has been this Xplan integration. So we really have the ability to either replace Xplan, I suppose, but in addition to that, just complement what they already do. And that's why they saw this as a good opportunity to partner with Raw because we can plug a couple of gaps there that perhaps are perceived by some advisors.
Yeah, and I think that's the nature of software these days, isn't it? It's very, it's very much which is the right part of which software to use, and it doesn't need to be an all or nothing kind of situation.
And look, I think the other point there, sorry, Graham, to butt in, but look, exactly that. And what we do, where we do, I suppose, differ to some of the providers out there is that we don't have any lock-in contracts. So we believe that it's all about advisor choice. And we think with this model, it almost keeps some of these other third parties honest in the sense that, you can't lock an advisor in. Everything's 30 days. Once your data's housed on Raw, you can pick and choose different productivity applications based on your requirements. So we think that's a really flexible model and something that the advisors are really appreciating right now.
So that's what you mean with this pricing here. So is this cheaper than what people would get direct if they were going to these providers, or is this sort of the retail rate, but they're getting the benefit of doing it through you? Or
yeah, so we quote the retail rates there. Obviously, like any sort of, I suppose, software deal, for those larger groups, clearly we can do things based on volume. But look, we think that this pricing structure is still compelling. And look, I've done many comparisons against some of these end-to-end providers, and Raw and our associated third parties always come in, under budget, I suppose, or less than some of those others. So, we're pretty happy with the way the pricing looks now, even once advisors add in a range of different third parties.
And the important thing is they're buying it sort of through you, so it's that convenience of billing one payment, all that sort of thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, you were saying that there's a few things on the radar or the development schedule. Where do you see this heading, and what are the priorities?
Yeah, so look, it's really exciting. I mean, we've spent the the previous I suppose 12, 18 months focusing on two key integrations and developments. One of those is the DynamicDocs, which is that sort of extension of our comprehensive SOA, which can now be done in sort of digital form for clients, and I think we're going to talk about that a bit later. But what we're looking at now is this integration roadmap with Xplan. And this is, as I said, been a big part of what we've done over the last 24 months. I should just sort of touch on this because this really is quite powerful. So the first phase, which essentially links the CRM component of the two products, was completed over a year ago. We've just gone live with the second phase. So what we mean by that is that any existing Xplan user who have their own sort of model office or hosted site essentially can do all their work in Xtools Plus, drag across the work they've done in some of the other modules like a Wealth Solver, IPS, etc., and then send that to Raw to leverage our market-leading sort of advice document generation capabilities. The third phase, which I think is even more exciting, is probably due early next year, is where even for those advisors that don't have Xplan currently or an Xplan hosted site, they will be able to subscribe to individual modules of Xplan via Raw. And think of it this way, I suppose the benefit of that is that you may have an advisor who really likes risk researcher versus perhaps some of the other products out there in that space. So, in this third phase, they'll be able to then go on and subscribe to any individual module that Xplan has. And again, fully integrated into our Raw's advice document generation.
Yeah, really powerful. Now, I am really excited by and interested in the DynamicDocs, which we're going to talk about now, because it's one of those bugbears I think a lot of people have, is that having to present that sort of 60, 90 page SOA that's this heavy document that's really dry, and that being this sort of engagement tool. And now with Fascia saying you've got to be confident and sure that the clients fully understand the recommendations you're making, it's not the best tool for delivering that, is it? So I think what you've done here is really interesting. So do you want to take us through a bit about what DynamicDocs is and what it delivers?
So this is really exciting. We think it's a real game changer. We know of a few other groups that have sort of tried something in this space, but we believe, given the strength of our advice document generation wizard and template, we've been able to essentially reproduce our comprehensive SOA in dynamic form. And what I mean by that is that advisors can still traditionally produce the SOA, that sort of 50, 60 page document, and send to clients. But what we're saying now is we've got another alternative. So for some of those clients out there that might be more tech savvy or sort of willing to move down this sort of digital world, an advisor can essentially send a link to a website where the client can view their SOA online in a completely and more aesthetically pleasing format. So Terry will take us through the demonstration of this later, but at a high level, Not only does it look good, it's got a lot of benefits around compliance. You can track the client's screen time when they read the document. You can essentially insert checkboxes where the client has to state that they've read everything, they understand it, and all the information's correct. So, a couple of these compliance factors built into it will really make life a lot easier down the track if we ever have to defend our advice. And I think that's, from a compliance point of view, really powerful. Not to mention the way it looks and feels. And again, the client doesn't have to go through and sift through many, many pages of advice here. They can just go in there, click on the bit that interests them, and drill down to that level of detail that they wish. So you can see the look and feel of it is actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think, that point of yours around the compliance box, it is really important because, how do you never prove that a client truly understood, but it's a great defense to say, look, here I can show we spent 10 minutes on this page explaining what, an allocated pension, what the strategy was, or the fees, and they acknowledged at the end of that they understood it. There's not a lot more you can do than saying, here I can show we really spent some time, and here's how we explained it, interactive. And I think in due course there could be some videos there to help explain.
Yeah, well, good point, Graham. And look, in actual fact, the videos has just been incorporated in our latest release that came out last week. So, whether the advisor wants to use the preloaded avatar to walk through the document with the client, they can do so. Or, which I think a lot of advisors will love, is the ability to create that video themselves and embed that into the document.
Wow.
And some of the smarts around it is super impressive, where it'll actually go in there and understand what the client needs to sell down, what the investment's going to be moving forward, and all that sort of stuff's automated. So even when it comes to maybe reviewing 100 clients in one go, they can do that without having to go into every single dynamic doc and customizing for that client. So, so Raw does all that in the background for clients. Right. And
there's some real efficiency gains as well.
Yeah, and I think that while what we're looking at here is the first cut for us. So this is the comprehensive SOA in digital form, but over the next 12, 18 months, we're looking to extend our digital advice across all the different documents advisors need to produce, like ROAs, FDS, opt-in, certain strategy papers. There's no limitation on what we can build off the back of this DynamicDocs capability.
And I think being kind of, online digital, you get so much more flexibility with how it's presented. So it's hard for people that are listening to this as a podcast, but if you're seeing on the screen, these are the sort of imagery that's presented. It's much more engaging than a word-heavy sort of document, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, look, being a visual person myself, and I know a lot of advisors are, as are their clients. So I think that we need to simplify things for clients. And, I never read my own SOAs back in the day, but this is definitely something that I'd, dive into and have a real good look, because it looks super impressive and the guys have done a fantastic job.
And you get, and being online, you get that advantage where if there's something you want more information on, you can click the icon and it'll explode that bit, and you can deep dive into that as much detail as you want. So it's really tailored to the individual without being word heavy in its presentation.
Absolutely. And yeah, look, and I think that's a great point, because we get we create a lot of efficiencies in the way we produce our traditional form SOA. So by configuring this in dynamic form is no work for the advisor. We've done all that work in the background. So whatever advice document you can produce in Raw, you get the same flexibility when creating that digital version. And I think that's a really important point, because there are some products out there where you want to make any particular change to something, it's a nightmare. So, we're pretty happy with the way it looks.
Yeah, and as we said, we'll have a demo of the actual system shortly, so you can actually see, what it looks like. But I think the overall that balance between compliance and yet a really engaging client experience is just where the industry needs to be heading generally.
Absolutely.
And in terms of sort of modeling and things, it's even got very dynamic modeling capability, so you can adjust what the graphs show right in front of the client's eyes if need be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this is the other thing. I mean, when it comes to looking at our projected outcomes, you want to be able to see the movement in the money and see how that looks. And look, we do have a lot of flexibility when it comes to building our SOA, including these different charts and graphs through Microsoft's infographic capabilities and doc variables. So, there's a lot of power in what we can produce here. And, from a cash flow modeling point of view, what you're looking at on the screen, or hopefully most people can see the screen, what we're looking at there is information that's been sucked across from the various cash flow modeling tools on our platform. So, we've actually recently acquired a product that was built on Raw called Archer, which is a fantastic goal-based cash flow modeling tool, created by Cameron O'Sullivan. He's done a fantastic job, and having seen the latest screens of the UI, we're pretty excited about what Archer's going to look like, now that we've hit the market. So, everything you see on the screen when it comes to the advice, is fully integrated through to our products that feed that data in.
Yeah, terrific. So I guess how would you summarise the sort of what Raw brings to the table and what the issues it solves for advisors?
Yeah, look, and as I mentioned, we see our two key strengths really around integration and connectivity between not only our own applications through to the advice, but also, as I mentioned, these integrated third parties. So that's probably number one. Number two would be, we've got arguably the best advice document generation capability in the market. So I put that at number two. And then obviously there's a whole lot of other range of things in which we believe can help an advisor on a day-to-day basis, whether that be around compliance with the advice documents they produce, or even the ability to capture that client data at the start of the journey, whether that be our own online fact find or one of our integrated third parties. And then I suppose finally, Graham, what this means for the advisors themselves. So, we believe, it's the same way I think advisors can sometimes get caught up in technology, whether it be building their own spreadsheets and managing that process themselves. We do all that work for them. So we'll connect their applications that they use in their everyday business. We can produce the advice documents. They can capture all the client data online. So despite being best of breed and having certain applications across the board, with the integration of these various third parties, we believe that we've got great choice when it comes to selecting applications, but also have the ability to create a whole lot of efficiencies that haven't really been seen before.
Terrific. Well, really appreciate that run through, Simon. We're really proud of sort of what Evolve Alliance is bringing to the table for advisors, and accessing member providers such as yourselves at Raw. I think is a real value add that we're able to provide to advisors. And I think where you're heading is exactly what we think advisors need to be thinking about, that combination of accessing best of breed tools, but doing it in a really efficient and effective way, and not having to get bogged down with data connectivity, and improving that client experience in a way that's actually delivering better compliance outcomes, while at the same time, a much more simpler, easy way for explaining the advice providers. I think it's, it ticks multiple boxes. So it's been a really informative and interesting session. Thanks, Simon.
So after listening to Simon, I'm hoping that when you see it, things will make a little bit more sense, because I understand that the concept around an advice marketplace is quite different. Like when you're talking about financial planning software, most people think of something like Xplan or Midwinter, where you have the one environment and you do everything within that one environment. Whereas the concept around the App Store or the advice marketplace is a little bit different. It's a bit more like what you would do on your smartphone, where there is an App Store, you go in and you subscribe to different applications, and these applications are all owned and developed by third parties, like they're independent of each other. And in that one phone, if you like, or in this case, our Raw platform, we bring all of those different providers together, and we do all the plumbing, all the connectivity between the applications, so that in a sense, they talk to each other via the Raw platform. So therefore, the key feature, I suppose, of the Raw platform is actually the store. So the store is where you go shopping. It's where you go in to select the applications that you want to use across the advice process. So when Simon talks about productivity applications, he means applications that allow you to do your work, like modeling tools. Like we have here Archer and Astute Wheel. Astute Wheel is a client engagement tool, but also has modeling capabilities. Archer is similar, but it's different. Again, we have, over time, we'll build this marketplace out so that there's choice. So when you're talking about one type of application that does this, there'll be a number of different providers for you to choose from. Because we know every advisor have different preferences. Some will like Astute Wheel, some will prefer Archer, some will prefer their own online fact find, whatever it is. The key benefit that we offer is really around the connectivity and the choice. So in terms of the applications that exist in the App Store at the moment, there are modeling tools, there are client engagement tools, there are things like DocuSign, which is, although not a financial planning application as such, it is something that is going to help you with efficiency when you've got to get documents signed by clients. We connect to MailChimp. OmniLife is an insurance quoting and research provider, similar to Risk Researcher. We also connect to other comprehensive CRMs. Now, that may seem a bit weird as a concept because we do have our own CRM within Raw. But again, the idea is that we don't build anything that we're not specialists in. We would prefer to connect so that you have access to really specialist providers, but all interconnected with each other. Because if we were to build out everything, we would become like another explant, and that would take another 20 years. We don't want to follow down that path, I suppose, because nowadays, as you know, and those of you who are really interested in tech providers, is that there are fantastic applications coming out onto the market all the time. And some of those are really, really fantastic, but that's all they do. They do that one thing really, really well. And what you want to do is to be able to tap into all of those specialist providers and then, in a sense, create your own financial planning software, if you like. So through Raw, you can definitely do that. Other providers on here, Raw has a standard online fact find. So if you're not interested in any others, all you want is to send a link out to your client to collect data on them. So the Raw fact find comes as part of the standard license and the premium license as well. And then we've got various ROA wizards and SOA wizards, and that's because we're document generation specialists. So we do all the document generation with our own technologies. And obviously Simon talked about the Iris connection. Tick is a SOA vetting capability. And then there's ChatWest, which is a little bit like WealthSolver. So that's just some of the applications that we have connected at the moment, but there are a few more that's in the pipeline to do. And over time, it's about building out this store so that you can have choice and then be able to switch from one provider to another if you're trying out different combination of software to see which combination works best for you. Okay, so that's the main feature. The other components of Raw, and this is why a lot of our users are able to use Raw as a financial planning system on its own, like a financial planning software on its own, or they simply use Raw to connect different technologies. So the other capabilities of Raw include the Raw CRM. The Raw CRM is required in order to make sure that the integration between different technologies work. And the CRM essentially is where you keep all your client information, but also anything that you collect via fact find. So things like the client's, goals and objectives. So there's room to house all of that within the Raw CRM. Income and expenses, assets and liabilities, all of this is available in Raw. There's also, other capabilities like the ability to link relationships and entities so that you keep tabs of the client group. And then there's full file note functionalities on here because, as you know, financial advice is all about making good file notes and keep evidence. So we do build a pretty good file note functionality. The other capabilities is the ability to create and allocate client service agreements. So this allows you to allocate an ongoing service agreement to your clients and then have the ability to track how these services are being delivered or whether they are being delivered. And then from this information, we would be able to generate your FDS statements and your renewal letters, etc. So all that capability.
Terry, the raw assistant can produce the FDS, so it has sufficient information in there to be able to generate the actual FDS?
Yes, absolutely. As long as you create the right ongoing service package and you list out the services that are due and you go in and you actually track them, in that when they're done, you mark them as complete, then that information would be available to push through and generate FDSs, etc. Yeah. So that's the ongoing service agreements. We also have pretty comprehensive workflow capabilities here where you can go in and build your own workflow and then allocate these across clients as well. And it will also allow you to keep track of where all the tasks are across all clients with an active workflow. So with those, what I call core functionalities, a lot of our advisors do use RAW as a full financial planning system. So they many have moved from other financial planning software across into RAW. But on the other hand, we also have a lot of advisors who simply use RAW as a connection between, a really good combination of software is Astute Wheel and Xplan. So a lot of them really use RAW for that, just simply in order to transfer information that they collect on Astute Wheel, because it's a lot more client friendly, and then passing all of that data onto Xplan so that you don't have to retype everything. So there's a lot of time savings there as well. What else is there? In terms of how we access different applications, so once you are subscribed to the various application, you would be able to jump into a client, and let's just say if we're looking to want to sort of obtain some insurance quotes. So these are all the applications that we have subscribed to. We simply go into the client and then click on the application that we want to launch, and we click launch, and it should take us straight into the application. So again, the idea is that we don't rebuild anything. We use the full functionality of the software that we're connected to, so that you do everything that you need to do in that specialist software. So this client doesn't have an occupation, so I'm just going to enter an occupation. And we launch straight into OmniLive. What we also do as part of integration is to bring across or pre-populate all the data as much as possible that's required by this particular application. So things like, to get an insurance quote, you need the client's name, age, smoker status, income, occupation, as well as the insurance needs analysis. So Astute Wheel or whatever tool that you've used to do your insurance needs analysis on RAW, that result can then be used to populate the insurance quoting tool, so that you don't have to remember what was it that we need to advise on. So it will all pre-populate, and then it's about doing your product research in OmniLive, getting the quotes and sending that data back into RAW. So according to this information, there's no one provider that is able to provide all of these types of insurance. So I might just remove a few. So I can just get a live quote. There you go. There's a couple of quotes here. What we can do is, after we've done our research, we've decided on these two that we're going to bring back into the system. So we say clicked save to CRM, which means save it back to RAW. Select a report that you want to save back as well. So this report will automatically save into the RAW file notes. Again, just means it's automatically done for you. You don't have to download and then upload. So all that is done for you. So all you've got to do is decide which product am I recommending. I really like NEOS. I'm going to recommend that to the clients. I'm going to drag it to the top, so that when we start to pull our document generation, this is when we generate our SOA. When we select this OmniLive quote, it's going to understand that the product that we are recommending is NEOS, and it will populate the SOA with this particular quote. So we just type a description, save, and then we jump back to raw, just quickly refresh, and you can see that the quote that we've done on OmniLive appears here. So it's now brought back to raw. The report that we had saved just today that we've just done then automatically saves into the file note against the client. So that's now ready for us to populate into the SOA. So we use the SOA wizard to also launch the SOA wizard. The SOA wizard is basically a tool to help you work through the SOA template, and it will prompt you to edit certain sections of the SOA in order to personalize it for the client. So you work your way through the SOA after you've done your insurance quote, if that's relevant, or you go into ChatWaz and do your product replacement. So the SOA that we have, so we upload an out-of-the-box SOA template. Can you see?
Yep.
Can you see the document? Yeah. So we, for those advisors who don't have the time or the resource to actually get their own template coded in raw. Coded means it will automatically populate with all the client data. You don't have to open a Word doc and manually type everything. So we've included an out-of-the-box SOA template that you can, customize. It will take a lot less time to customize one of our templates than it is to do one from scratch. So we already have something that is, I'd say, 80 to 90% there. And then you just need to add in your particular licensee disclosures, etc., and then it's ready to go. So the template, I'll give you a really quick look, and then we'll open up DynamicDocs. So the template looks like this. We provide a quick summary or snapshot of the client situation. This particular diagram is automatically generated in using the client's particular information. So it personalizes the diagram to the client without you having really to do anything. But, if you do need to adjust a few things, you can actually make some changes. So it's a pretty flexible sort of thing. Financial situation summarized up front. Scope of advice, we include another diagram which basically highlight the areas of advice that you're doing for the client. You control this diagram in the SOA wizard. And then we go through the strategy text. We also load in, by the way, about 40 odd strategies in there with text. So you have to come up with your own, but you can definitely add in your own strategies. And you can select it to use as well. So that's strategies. And then we go through to our product recommendations section. So if you've used ChatWaz or OmniLive, everything will be automatically populated, including the charts to work out your target versus recommended asset allocation. Insurance products will come from the OmniLive quote that we select to include.
And then this thing just goes straight into the document, into the DynamicDocs, does it, Terry?
Yeah, yep, sure. So once you generate this Word document, you can, do the normal where you PDF and email it out to the client. But in RAW, we do offer a slightly different solution called DynamicDocs. And the DynamicDocs basically converts your Word-based document into a digital format. And it takes 3 or 4 clicks to do that. So we're not talking about another 2 or 3 hours. Simply go create, give it the document a name, and upload your SOA document. And when you do that, you'll get this line appear. You can email a link out to the client via here, but I'll give you a quick look at what it actually looks like. So that Word doc SOA now looks like this. So this is actually what the client sees when they click on the link. It's a digital format. You can navigate through the document, through the SOA via the navigation panel, or you click next. That diagram that we had in the SOA, just make it smaller, is now converted to this web-based format. As you can see, because it's now web-based, it's very dynamic. The best thing is you can actually click into these and actually bring up the full tables that you normally see in SOAs. You know, here's all your income and expenses, etc. So you can actually click and it links into those tables, which in our template will keep it in the back. But you can sort of definitely do that. So it's great for to assist with clients' understanding is that information is displayed as a summary, high level, but you can easily drill into any of the information to actually see more details. And it's particularly great with charts. Let me just jump to projected outcomes. This is actually made with Explain data. Those who use Explain would recognize this chart. So once we pull, we can actually pull Explain, you know, Excel's plus scenarios, a wealth solver scenario now, and populate it into an SOA generated in raw. But now that it's, because we get raw data from Explain, we can recreate any diagrams, but it becomes really dynamic in this format. You can actually even play around with the chart as well. So that's the level of dynamic capability that we can have.
Much more engaging.
Sorry?
Yeah, much more engaging than, you know, peering over that sort of paper-based document. And Terry, is there, from a compliance perspective, is there tracking of how long you stay on a particular page? Like you can see that you spent 5 minutes on the fees and
yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things you've noticed is there's these particular flags. You know, it's a tick versus an exclamation mark. Throughout the document, there are sections in the template that the client needs to acknowledge that the information is correct, or to acknowledge whether they understand the advice that they're given or the fees that's been explained. So if they acknowledge those areas, there'll be a little tick. So it gives you a lot more feedback in this format. And again, what Brian mentioned is that the CEO wants you to have to show evidence that you've explained that the client really understand. This goes one step further than your word-based document, in that it does allow you to do that. Yes, in terms of tracking how long the client has spent reading the document, there is a time tracker, or it tracks the client's screen time to show how long they've spent reading each section. And it does stop when they're not active on the screen or they close out. And then when they next open it again, it will restart. So the timing is actually actual screen time. The other capability is when you're, well, from a client's perspective, if they're reading anything, I've done something, if they're reading anything and they don't understand, they can actually highlight the section and post a comment to their advisor. And when they do that, and if the advisor happens to be online, in the same link, the advisor can actually see the comment and type something back.
Otherwise, it just goes there as a record for them to then answer later on, does it? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can actually download all the comments and responses between the advisor and the client, and all of that history is captured and it will automatically save to file notes after you're done.
From a compliance perspective, you know, if you're forever audited, you know, why did you assume that the client understood the advice? Well, here's all the questions they asked. So I had an understanding that they were really engaged with the advice, and here's my answers. So you've got it, not just, you know, I went through it in detail. You've actually got real proof from a compliance perspective.
Yes, yes, definitely. And in the last 2 to 3 minutes, this is the latest. What I want to show you is, as Simon mentioned, we're now able to upload the capability to have videos on DynamicDocs. This is hot off the press. We've only just done this, so I do want to show you what that potential look like. I hope you can hear the videos. So let's cross our fingers. Oh, sorry, wrong one. This is the one with the video, where there'll be a bit like a concierge, where the video will explain to the client what they need to do. I'll just jump to a slightly shorter video. Can you hear that?
No. I think if you're sharing screen, you need to share the video sound.
Yeah. Oh, I knew this would happen. It's something about the sound. Anyway.
I wouldn't worry, Terry. We obviously can show this when we do our weekly demos and webinars for those that are interested, but yeah, it looks good.
And in your experience, or Simon, when advisors, presumably they can either send the link to the client to then go through this in their office, or a lot of them might be using this in their office when clients are actually allowed to come in to the office and actually put it up on a screen on the wall and talk them through it. Are you seeing advisors doing both those?
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely a combination. I mean, the same way we see some advisors that, still prefer that traditional SOA, but depending on who their clients are, of course, they can do this either with the client in the boardroom or given, the current pandemic and lockdown lives that we live. It's another great tool to be able to provide advice remotely. So, yeah, it's definitely up to the advisor and what their preference is.